Make sure you subscribe on all platforms and leave that 5-star review. Let's get it.
I just think how y'all even look at the game is whack. Playoff success, like you factor in team success when you talking about players. I just think how y'all consume the game is trash. Like, are you good or not?
Why did I fake laugh at Steve Curry? It wasn't funny.
Talk about it.
You are now tuned in to Above the Rim.
Hoops talk for the streets.
Family, what's good? Welcome back to another edition of Above the Rim. Hoops talk for the streets. You already know how we do, family. Brought to you as always. It's your host, Justin, aka Just Blaze. Family, you know the drill. To get in contact with me, you can always hit me up and follow me on Twitter at JustBlaze_513, on IG at JustBlaze513, on Facebook and YouTube, search Above the Rim Podcast. Also email the show as well, Above the Rim NBA Podcast at gmail.com. Tap in and leave the family a voicemail. The line is always open, 908-718-1592. Make sure you calling in and leaving your voicemails. Best way to support the show is by copying your merch. You already know. Link is in my bio. Very easy to find. Show some love. I appreciate it, of course. Make sure you leave me a review on iTunes, on Spotify. If you rock with the show, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you stop what you're doing right now. Hit that thumbs up. Hit a subscribe. Leave me a comment. Show some love. Tell me your thoughts also as well. I want to hear from the family. Listen, I'm here, family, miss. This is a special episode for better or for worse right now because, family, you know what I'm here to talk about. Streets have been calling for me. The streets have been asking my thoughts about this. I was a little tight. I'm a little over it right now. It's about Chris Paul to the Warriors, right? If there was ever a Just Blaze trade, this is it right here that will send me over the edge. I'll tell you right now. I can't believe I'm saying this, but let's talk about Chris Paul getting traded to the Golden State Warriors. I can't believe I just said that right now, family. Can you believe those words just came out of my mouth? Chris Paul on the Golden State Warriors? My boy with Steph Curry on the Golden State Warriors? As Jay and Bean said, this can't be life. There's gotta be more. This can't be us. Listen, man, the Golden State Warriors agreed to send Jordan Poole, Ryan Rollins, a top 20 protected 2030 first round pick, a future second rounder to the Wizards for the best point guard of this generation. You heard that correct. You heard me, family. All right, Golden State made an all-time upgrade in basketball IQ by acquiring Chris Paul, a playmaking genius, for their young, very costly young playmaker and exceptional scorer, Jordan Poole. Jordan Poole became a very costly player, and he doesn't move the needle other than scoring, right? In today's NBA, that may not be enough. Only on Twitter is it enough for an NBA player to just score and do nothing else. According to GMs, that clearly is not enough, right? So $128 million over the next 4 years is the contract that the Golden State Warriors gave to Jordan Poole. And they basically have said, we made a mistake giving this guy this kind of money, right? From the outside looking in, Chris Paul and the Warriors are like oil and water. Oil and water, these two. Polar opposites, but each get the job done in their own particular way. But CP3 has made awkward fits work before, and I assume he's going to do it again, right? So when the trade happened, I had to shut my phone off because I was so pissed right now. I was getting calls, DMs, and texts like I just got traded. I thought I was on a team for a second. I felt like I needed to book a flight to the Bay and ask these dudes if they were serious about this trade because I was in disbelief. But now I had a couple of days to process it. And first, I didn't see how it would work. But now I see the vision of Steve Kerr and the Warriors management. So let's break it down. I'm here to break it down with you guys here, right? So at first glance, we know that Chris Paul and Steph Curry play the same position, but vastly different roles. CP is more methodical in his approach, more pick and roll heavy, more about execution. Steph Curry is an assassin, can score from anywhere on the floor, fearless on the floor also as well. But maybe these two together is exactly what the Warriors need and exactly what the NBA needs, right? Because it's going to be a clash of styles on the same team. And I actually like it. I actually love it. You get the best of both worlds right here. So let's break it down, right? So one of the best kept secrets last year was that the Golden State Warriors were a top-heavy team, and their second unit was pretty much non-existent other than a couple of Jordan Poole buckets, right? They tried staggering their stars or playing Draymond and playing Steph Curry with the second unit, but we saw how it wasn't enough. We saw them how they lost to the Lakers, who had no business in the conference finals, seeing how they got swept. They shouldn't have lost to that Lakers team, but they did because the Lakers were a little bit better and had more of a play style. And then the Golden State Warriors just couldn't make their shots the same way they normally do, right? So in that series too, Jordan Poole was terrible in that series, right? So insert Chris Paul over Jordan Poole, and that's just a massive upgrade in this Golden State Warriors lineup. An upgrade in skill, upgrade in IQ, winning mentality, poise, and in stature in the NBA. One of the main Achilles heels of the Golden State Warriors from the past couple of years has been what? Turnovers. What does Chris Paul specialize in? Taking care of the ball, right? In fact, Chris Paul has the highest assist to turnover ratio in NBA history right now. He is the point guard for a reason, right? One of the more underrated things from last season was Jordan Poole's struggles with the ball and struggles controlling the second unit and really allowing the rest of the second unit players to really prosper in that lineup. We saw in that lineup, Jordan Poole did a lot of scoring for himself. He didn't really set a lot of guys up. He didn't really play the role that Steve Kerr wanted him to play, even though he was actually, asked to do multiple different things in the lineup. He wasn't really a facilitator, which is what the Golden State Warriors actually needed with that second unit, right? Steve Kerr, he had to take the ball out of his hands a lot more as the season progressed, and it led to guys like Wiggins, GP2 handling the ball a little bit more, which is obviously not their strength in that second unit, right? Which is why he needed to stagger a lot of Draymond Green, a lot of Steph Curry on the floor. I mean, the problem is those two guys, they turn the ball over as well. Neither Steph nor Dre is a natural point guard in the NBA, and the Golden State Warriors, they haven't really had a natural point guard since the Steph Curry era, in the entire Steph Curry era, right? Livingston and Jarrett Jack were both combo guards that they had a couple of years ago. And don't let me get started on Klay Thompson, who can dribble. And having CP3 makes them finishers again. And there's no drop-off in intelligent basketball from the first unit to the second unit, staggering in both units. It doesn't matter. They won't have any drop-off in intelligent basketball for the Golden State Warriors, right? So Chris Paul was 4th in assists this year and won the assist title last year. He can pass in his sleep, 6-time assist champ, 4-time steals champ. This is nothing for him to realize where guys need to be at whatever point they need to be on the floor at all times. He's a extension of the coach on the floor. Steph Curry can turn into a little bit more of an assassin, even though he's already is. Now he can play off the ball a lot more and never have to worry about any playmaking responsibilities, which may be a godsend for a guy like Steph Curry, right? It may be a godsend for a guy like him, and it may be exactly what he's asked for. How do we know that, right? So we're looking at how I'm going to talk about it a little bit further of how they may adjust the lineups and how Chris Paul may start, may come off the bench. But listen, I'll tell you right now, he's not coming off the bench, right? But he will be playing a lot with the second unit. So those Chris Paul, Gary Payton 2, Kuminga second unit lineups will look really good. They're going to look really good on the floor, right? They can play defense. They're athletic. And all they needed was structure in that lineup for the drop-off in production for when Steph was on the floor and when Steph was off the floor. And the Steph and CP3 and Klay lineups will be beautiful to watch. High IQ basketball. Chris Paul has never played with shooters that he can count on as good as Steph and Klay on the floor. Chris Paul's arrival also takes the load off of Steph Curry, who averages most minutes per game in the in the Steve Kerr era this season. He plays the most minutes he's ever had. But they could potentially help keep each other healthy by easing each other's burdens. When they play together, Steph Curry can fling himself off of screens while Chris Paul handles the ball, looking for openings off that chaos that Steph creates. It's going to be beautiful to watch, right? And let's be honest, all of those years that the Golden State Warriors' main adversary was usually a Chris Paul-led team, right? Why? Because they were more methodical. They know how to maximize every single possession, and they also play defense. So you bring in all of that into the Golden State Warriors lineup that's already potent, that's already a killer already as it is. I'm forgetting my words. My apologies. But now they have that methodical approach, like I said before, along with their pace and space movement offense that the Golden State Warriors like to run. I actually think it's going to be beautiful to watch, right? They could get crazy a little bit and maybe start Kuminga, maybe start Wiggins at the 4, Dre at the 5. You could keep Looney at the 5, keep Dre at the 4, Clay at the 3, Steph at the 2, Chris Paul at the 1. So they can either sub out Wiggins, they can either sub out Klay Thompson, they can either sub out Looney. There's a lot of different avenues that the Golden State Warriors can go with Chris Paul coming in this lineup, because how they're going to do it is probably Chris Paul will start the game. Then he's probably going to come out a little bit early in the game. And then they have a traditional lineup mid-quarter and then bring CP back at the end of the first, close to the second. And then he plays with the second unit and we make sure there's structure in that unit. So there's no drop-off in that lineup. Now, the biggest beneficiary to Chris Paul coming to the Golden State Warriors is Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson is going to be the biggest beneficiary. You know why? I think Klay Thompson is going to have a way better season this year instead of last year with Jordan Poole, right? So Klay was taking some wild shots in the playoffs. We all saw that when Steph wasn't on the floor with him, especially against the Lakers. CP3 should actually be able to find him in his spots way easier. He's going to get the ball a lot more, actually. And Klay, if we're being honest, Klay has lost a step. Let's be honest right now. He's lost a step a little bit, and rightfully so. He's had a couple of injuries, a couple of devastating injuries. So this might mean that Klay Thompson may be better suited at the 3 over the 2. Maybe that's what Steve Curry is thinking in his eye. We saw Klay take a million bad shots in that series. Draymond Green makes a bunch of turnovers in a series. Sometimes he makes some questionable decisions. And a lot of it is because the Golden State Warriors play very fast, right? So they play very fast, and sometimes they forget that the most important part is taking care of the ball, because when you turn over the ball, you're giving the opposing defense a lot of opportunities to score against you. You can't do that, especially in a playoff series. And we saw how the Lakers took advantage of that in this particular postseason, right? Also with Chris Paul, they're going to become the best free throw shooting team in the league. Chris Paul is an excellent free throw shooter. I think he won the free throw shooting, not really a title, but, he was the number 1 in free throw shooting, I think like 2 years ago. Steph was also it, I believe, last year or the year before that. One of Golden State Warriors' also weaknesses is pick and roll possessions. They're a bottom 3 in the league last year in pick and roll possession. Chris Paul's strength is obviously pick and roll efficiency, and it will be great to see how he commands that first unit and that second unit, and really allowing these guys to be more of a mid-range threat and really more of a pick and roll team than they have been in the past, right? So adding a basketball savant like Chris Paul to a roster scheme predicated on basketball IQ is exceptional, right? So let's talk about some of the games missed, since Twitter has been so uninformed over how Chris Paul has missed so many games. Chris Paul is always hurt. He's never there when you need him most. So let's look at, I wrote this on Twitter, but I want to say here on the episode too, right? Let's take a look at the games played from Chris Paul and a bunch of the, and 2019, 2020, Chris Paul played 70 games. Draymond Green played 43 games. Steph Curry played 5 games. And Jordan Poole played 57 games. Advantage Chris Paul. 2020, 2021, Chris Paul, 70 games. Draymond Green, 63 games. Steph Curry, 63 games. Jordan Poole, 51 games. Advantage Chris Paul. 2021, 2022, Chris Paul, 65 games. Draymond Green, 46 games. Steph Curry, 64 games. Jordan Poole, 76 games. Advantage, Jordan Poole. 2022 to 23, last year, Chris Paul missed the most amount of games he's missed in a while because they held him out a lot. Remember that. Played 59 games. Draymond Green played 73 games. Steph Curry played 56 games. Jordan Poole played 82 games, right? So we've seen 3 out of those 4 seasons, Chris Paul played majority of his games and a lot more than the Golden State Warriors main core that's there right now. So that could tell you right now, Chris Paul doesn't miss games like that throughout the regular season. A lot of times where he's missed games, they were freak accidents or injuries in the playoffs where his team cannot sustain him being gone for any amount of time. Now, whose fault is that his team can't sustain where he can be out for a game or 2 and then come back? If you remember, in when the Golden State Warriors had that playoff run a couple of years ago when they played the Blazers in the conference finals, right? Steph Curry started that entire playoffs hurt. And the Golden State Warriors were still able to win that series and really elevate themselves still to the conference finals. And Steph Curry came back, and then it was magical. He was able to miss a few games in the playoffs and come back, and the team didn't miss a beat. Chris Paul has never been afforded that type of luxury with any of the teams that he's ever been on, right? Men lie, women lie, Twitter lies, but the numbers don't. All right? Listen, I'm gonna stop, right? Listen, playing less minutes for Chris Paul is an advantage for everyone. Advantage for Chris Paul, advantage for the team, advantage for Steph Curry because they can split minutes, and then they're both really going to prolong each other's career by playing together. And I think it's actually an excellent pairing. Even though I was against it in the beginning, I've actually come around to see how it can work, right? Because Chris Paul has never had a competent backup in his career. And it's not saying that Steph Curry is a backup because clearly he's not, but these two can play together. But the way they're going to stagger those minutes, they're both going to be playing a lot together and a lot without each other. So running two different offenses for the Golden State Warriors is a major advantage for any NBA team, right? It's like you're game planning for two different elite teams at one time. Chris Paul plays slow, the Warriors play fast. Shut up. Nobody wants to hear that. If you're a great player, you can adjust to anything, and that's exactly what Chris Paul is going to do. And no, Chris Paul is not coming off the damn bench. I think Kerr has to make a decision on either putting Wiggins or putting Klay Thompson off the bench. But it's going to be a lot more staggering, so I don't even think it really matters that much. I think CP will start to begin of the game. I think he's going to come out of the game very early, probably around the 7-8 minute mark. And then for one of those guys, either Klay or Wiggins, and then comes back in at the end of the first quarter, the beginning of the second quarter, and then control the offense his normal way. And when he comes in, those are going to be intelligent basketball minutes, right? The Warriors have never had a pick and roll threat that they can really rely on in the mid-range the same way Chris Paul is doing that since the beginning of the time. Let's not act. You want to act like he's washed. How could he be washed? He averaged 14 and 9 last year. That's not washed. I could tell you a lot of players who can't even do that. Man is 38 years old. What you expecting to do? 20 and 10? What you expecting? 25 and 15? Come on now. Let's be real. Let's be real. Okay? Let's be serious about this. So every single team that Chris Paul has been on, he has made better. So the Chris Paul disrespect has gotten out of hand from a lot of you losers who just watch basketball on Twitter. Men lie, women lie, the numbers don't. Go look it up. The Warriors thrive in chaos, and now they have the best of both worlds. This is going to be tough to stop. I'm very excited to see how this pairing is going to work. High-level basketball. Obviously, we know Steph Curry and Chris Paul obviously spoke before the trade went down, so they are willing to play together, willing to sacrifice. That's the only way teams win championships anyway, is when people sacrifice. So if nobody is sacrificing on the team, there's no way you're going to be able to win a championship. So everybody on that team is going to have to sacrifice. We're going to see how Draymond Green comes into play and how well when he re-signs and how he fits into the lineup also as well. Are they going to stagger him in that way? He's going to play more with Chris Paul, a little less with Chris Paul, a little loony. They do need to get a lob threat, which would help a lot of their pick and roll possessions. So I assume they're going to go after a lob threat, but they're going to be fine. Chris Paul, Steph Curry, from foes to friends. We're going to see how this works. And I'm excited to see how this works. Bradley Beal to the Suns. He was officially announced this weekend. I think it's going to work well for them too. The Suns have gone the offensive firepower route to get the job done. And I think it may play dividends for them. They clearly want to play a different style. They clearly want to play a different way, a more up-tempo type of offense, a more offensive type of game. Paying a premium for Bradley Beal as a third option is a gamble, but it will or probably will pay off for the Phoenix Suns, right? They're going to be a very difficult team to stop, especially in isolation, having three of the best scorers in the league all on one roster. I can't remember how many times that has been done. Talked about Brooklyn. Everybody knows when that happened with KD, Kyrie, and James Harden. By the way, we need to talk about how many super teams KD has had so far. I really don't like that, but I'm going to let that slide right now. That's neither here nor there. But we know they're going to be difficult to stop, right? Devin Booker is going to have to play a lot more point guard this season, something I think he can do very well. He averaged over 5 assists before when he usually plays points, so he does a good job of that. In the playoffs, when Chris Paul was out, you saw him handling the ball a lot more. You saw him really bringing it up, but it was more on the scoring aspect, but he still took the time out to make sure he facilitated, make sure he got guys in his spots, right? So I think it's going to be adjustment for Devin Booker also as well, but I think clearly he wants to take on the challenge to be more of a facilitator and a scorer in his team because he's basically the only constant in this team. Everybody else is pretty much fairly new on this roster, so they're going to rely heavily on Devin Booker to really call out their sets, for him to really get everybody in their right spots because none of these guys have ever really played together before. So it's going to have to be someone that they lean upon, and clearly and obviously it's going to have to be Devin Booker. So I'm excited to see how he adjusts in his new role, and he's going to have to score less and distribute more so that the team, the Phoenix Suns, can maintain their rhythm. So I think it's going to be adjustment for him, but something that he can absolutely, definitely do. And one thing I am worried about with the Suns, though, who's going to guard the scoring ones in that lineup? Because if they're starting Devin Booker and Bradley Beal, both of those two guys are not really used to scoring and guarding an opposing team's scoring point guard that often. They usually don't typically take that assignment. So we're going to see which one of those guys is going to really sacrifice that and really guard the best player on the opposing team, right? So we'll see how that works. I think Bradley Beal, he's going to be excellent on the team. He's going to be bringing his scoring prowess. Listen, he has to play. He can't get hurt because in the last few years, he's missed a lot of games. He played 57 games, 60 games, 40 games, 50 games. That's a lot of games to be missing for a franchise player. So he can't do that over there in Phoenix because with them now being a top-heavy team, they're not going to have the money to really build out the depth that they need so that guys can take games off, so that guys can take plays off, so that guys can get some rest. So we're going to see how Frank Vogel navigates that, and he's going to have to be playing these guys big minutes. So let's hope that playing big minutes doesn't make them susceptible to injuries. So we'll see how the Suns figure that out. And the West backcourt, the backcourts in the West are really insane now. They're absolutely insane. You got Beal and Booker. You got CP3 and Steph. You got Murray and KCP. You got Dame and Scoot Henderson, maybe. You got Russ and PG, maybe. You got Kyrie and Luka, maybe, probably. You got John Bain. You got Fox and Monk. You got SGA and Giddey. You got Porter and Green. You got CJ and Herb. Listen, there's a lot of backcourts in the Western Conference, and it's going to get real crazy. It's going to get real sticky. We're going to see how that works out. I'm going to talk a little bit more about them when they see how the rosters progress. There was another trade also right before the draft. The Celtics and the Grizzlies and the Wizards had a 3-team deal. The Celtics get Kristaps Porzingis, 2 first-round picks. The Grizzlies get Marcus Smart. The Wizards get Tyus Jones and a second-round pick. Listen, when I look at this trade, I think it's a win-win-win deal for all 3 teams, right? I think the Smart and Porzingis deal was a personality trade, in my opinion. I think Marcus Smart unintentionally didn't allow for Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to become the leaders on that team, right? KP's personality fits more with that unit because he's a lot more mild-mannered. And I think it's just a win-win-win for all sides, right? So the Boston Celtics had to shake up their lineup in some particular way. I guess they felt like they couldn't bring back everybody that they had last year because they still lost to the Miami Heat. I don't think they want to move on from Jaylen Brown. I think this move solidifies that Jaylen Brown stays on the Boston Celtics and maybe he becomes that leader that they need in that locker room. Because one thing I noticed about the Boston Celtics, they lack a little leadership, right? So Marcus Smart took it upon himself to be the leader, but I don't think those guys really wanted him to be the leader. I just think he took it upon himself to be the vocal person, the most outspoken person on that roster. And maybe or may not the guys have like that, so we don't know. But Marcus Smart on the Grizzlies, though, I think it's going to be excellent for them, right? I think he's a great vet for that Grizzlies team, especially with John Morant being out. He's going to be out the first 25 games. Marcus Smart's going to fit right in there and really bring that grit and grind culture back to the Memphis Grizzlies. And I think he's a perfect fit for those guys. When Ja comes back, though, he's going to be coming off the bench and really be that third guard between John Morant and Desmond Bane. And I think it's going to work out really well for them. So I'm really excited to see how that trade shakes out. Porzingis, I said before, he's going to provide a lot of versatility in the front court for the Celtics. We're going to see how that works out with him and Rob Williams and Horford. They turn into a very big team after this trade. And Tyus Jones, he finally gets a starting opportunity on the Wizards with Jordan Poole. We're going to see that backcourt is going to put up a lot of points. No restrictions on that team, obviously. So we're going to see how those two really take their leading role and see if they can really start a new culture in Washington. You know, there's a youth movement going on, and those two are going to be the catalyst of that youth movement in Washington. Now, will Dame get traded? I don't know. Who knows? Nobody knows. I'm tired of the back and forth, the speculation between Damian Lillard getting traded if he's not getting traded. I'm just tired of the speculation right now. Listen, I think there's a couple of teams he can go to. Obviously, the Miami Heat are one. The Philadelphia 76ers are a team that's been looking at him. And then I also think the Brooklyn Nets. A lot of people are sleeping on the Brooklyn Nets being a made trade partner for Damian Lillard. I ultimately think he will end up in Brooklyn if he does get traded, right? Because if there's any team that has an upper hand in the Damian Lillard trade, I think it's the Brooklyn Nets. The Nets have a plethora of movable draft picks in upcoming drafts. They could trade some of their draft picks that they just drafted. They had the 21 and the 22 pick. Dame has a great relationship with Mikal Bridges. He said on multiple occasions that that's one of the guys that he wants to play with. And we're going to see how much he wants to leave, because I think now that they drafted Scoop, I think he's on the clock. What I think they should do is say, Dame, listen, give him a deadline. Listen, we got 7 days. Decide with us if you want to play with Scoot or do you want to move on, right? Because I think the Trailblazers organization is giving him a lot of respect to be able to dictate when he gets traded. Because listen, Dame, I'll tell you right now, don't take that for granted, because you've seen what happened with other players. You can be moved at any moment, whether you like it or not. So I think while you have the opportunity, you need to stand firm on your feet and say, listen, I'm staying here for the rest of my career, or maybe for a couple more years, to groom Scoot Henderson, or just trade me right now so I can have the best opportunity to win. I think James just needs to put his foot down. And maybe he has. We don't know. You can't always believe everything that's being reported, because you never know what's really going down behind the scenes. So we're going to see how that, by this episode comes out, who knows? He might be traded by then. Who knows? I hope not. But you never know in the NBA, because the NBA is a business, and business is business. So we'll see how that works out, right? So family, just a quick episode. I just wanted to let you know my thoughts on a couple of things going on. I'll be back probably a little bit after free agency to recap a lot of things that went on. Family, I appreciate you for joining me once again for another episode. Make sure you hit me up on Twitter, IG, Facebook with all your NBA takes. Send in a voicemail, 908-718-1592. Let me know what you think about all these trades. Let me know what you think about CP3 to the Warriors. If Dame is going to get traded, Porzingis to the Celtics, Marcus Smart on the Grizzlies. Let me know how you feel about that, family. Subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend. And we out.